Hello and welcome to the Sports Greeks podcast. This is the Super Bowl preview edition. I am Victor Logothetis, your host, otherwise known as the Sports Greek. My Twitter handle is @BigGreek24. The podcast page is thesportsgreek.libsyn.com. We can get this podcast anywhere you find your podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We also have a YouTube channel. It's TSG Sportsnet. We're actually recording this podcast right now briefly for the YouTube channel. We're going to put that up. Before we get to the Super Bowl previews and the interviews we have, we're going to have a pretty good show here, I think. We're going to have an interview that was taped on Thursday with the football guru, Russell Baxter. And then Friday morning, I was able to get another outstanding guest on to interview Friday morning. Hall of Fame writer and author of the Eagles Cyclopedia, Ray Didinger from Comcast Sportsnet, also Philadelphia's own WIP Sports Radio 94.1. So we will play those interviews for you to get both those gentlemen's insights and also their predictions in the game. You'll get mine later in the show as well. Before we get to that, let's talk about a little good stuff, bad stuff. So we'll go with the good stuff first. The Houston Astros hired Dusty Baker as their next manager in the wake of the firing of A.J. Hinch. Amidst the whole sign-stealing fiasco, they separated from A.J. Hinch and have hired Dusty Baker, a rather credible hire, I think. I would have liked, actually, he was the one I wanted to see the Phillies hire because he left Washington on a very sour note after getting the team into the playoffs 2 seasons in a row with Bryce Harper in his lineup. And of course, they were knocked out in the first round in each of those seasons. Then he was dismissed and then replaced by Davey Martinez, who, of course, this year guided the Washington Nationals to their first ever World Series championship. But Dusty Baker has just been a winner everywhere he's been. He won with the Giants. He may have lost in the World Series, but he turned that team around. He got the Cubs into the playoffs. And again, unfortunately, there's a very famous collapse there, for lack of a better term, in the playoffs. That was the whole Bartman thing with the foul ball that he reached over the wall to try and get while Moises Alou was trying to catch it, and then the ensuing events that occurred after that, unfortunately, kept the Cubs out of the World Series that year. And of course, he was with the Nationals as well, and also the Cincinnati Reds. People forget about his time with the Reds. Again, turned what was a bad team at the time into a winner. Again, not getting him, a world championship, but certainly getting the team turned back into the right direction. So good job by the Houston Astros in hiring Dusty Baker. He's a little long in the tooth, as they like to say. He played with Henry Aaron. He came up with the Braves. Played a long time for the Dodgers. Really he knows the right way to play baseball. The Dodgers always taught their coaches, managers, players, the right way to play the game, whether it was with Walter Alston or Tommy Lasorda. So it'll be interesting to see the job that Baker does with the Astros. He's probably walking in on the most talented team he's ever gotten to walk in on. That, they won 107 games last year. A couple of years ago, won a World Series. So they're certainly in a position to be good again. With the sign stealing thing hopefully behind them, the players involved certainly going to have to make peace with their players on other ball clubs and stuff. And again, it'll be interesting to see when the Astros travel what the reception will be and how they handle it. Will they just put their heads down and play ball, or will it be somewhat of a distraction? I think a guy like Baker, who's media savvy, respected on all the baseball circles, respected in any clubhouse he walks into, I think should be able to handle this very well. It's a very unusual circumstance to have a hiring of a manager this late before spring training. We're talking just less than a couple of weeks before pitchers and catchers report, and the only other times this really ever happens if a manager just kind of stepped away, or if unfortunately you had a manager pass away, like one case with the Mets with Gil Hodges, who went into spring training as their manager and actually passed away during spring training. So we'll see how that works out. I haven't seen anything with the Red Sox and their hiring yet, but good job for the Astros bringing in Dusty Baker. Now, let's talk about bad job here for a moment. Had on Sunday, as we know, last Sunday, Kobe Bryant passed away very tragically in a helicopter accident. He and his daughter and 7 other victims all perished. Now, Kobe Bryant is not a perfect human being. We know this, okay? We know the things that have happened with him. 2003, he had the rape allegations and what, and those things are very tragic, and they are those whole situations are just never good. But there's a political reporter. Remember this, political reporter, not sports journalist, Felicia Sonmez with the Washington Post, who chose that moment for whatever reason to tweet out a link to a story about Kobe Bryant's alleged rape. And talk about timing. We'll call it what it is. It was awful. It was a terrible decision. It was just gross. No journalistic integrity whatsoever to do that the day the man dies. If you want to bring it up 24 hours, 48 hours, 72, or somewhere where you're remembering the guy, but let's get some separation and be able to process what happened. And this, we'll call her woman, decides to tweet that out as just awful. She got suspended by the Post. There was a real outcry on Twitter that she should have been fired. I still think she should have been fired, I'm going to be honest with you. She was suspended with pay, and then she was reinstated on Tuesday. Horrible, horrible job by Felicia to tweet that out. So essentially what we're saying, and what they're saying is that you can't have the death of him without the truth. So you can't celebrate him without the truth. So basically what she's now saying, I'll be honest with you, is that so if anybody dies who has a flaw in their characters, and when Bill Clinton finally passes away, it'll be okay 5-10 minutes after the guy passes away to say, yeah, I remember Bill Clinton. He came on Monica Lewinsky's dress one time. You don't do that. You just don't do that. Okay, I understand that Kobe Bryant had his issues. I get it. But, this person, and I understand that there's a victim out there from that who I know is affected by that. And there's millions of women out there, unfortunately, who have to deal with that kind of thing. And some of them never even come forward. I don't want to get into that. But in this one case, that was just horrendous judgment. No journalistic integrity at all, and I really expect better from a publication like the Washington Post. That should not have happened. She should have been suspended. She should still be suspended, and she actually should have been fired. I'm going to be honest with you, because that was just piss poor for her to do that. You have a wife and a mother, okay, who just earlier that day found out that she's going to have to, unfortunately, bury her husband and bury one of her children. And I'll tell you something, a parent should never have to worry about doing that and burying their child, okay? And for her to tweet that out, I just thought was beyond reprehensible. I'm going to say that forever. There's a jackass who wrote an opinion column, I guess, who works with her but's never met her. So I guess all these people don't ever go to the office. And his name, I'll get that right now. David Von Drell writes an opinion article saying that, she just swung the hammer of truth. BS. Yes, it was the truth. Yes, he did what he did. Yes, but Jesus, Christmas, 17 freaking years ago this happened, okay? Not excusing Kobe for it. He's got to answer at that point to his wife and his family and everybody around him as to what he did, okay? Which, again, we're not going to get into the details of it. The point of the whole thing is that it should not have been tweeted on the day the man died. The day the man was killed, let's allow the people, and I get the celebrity thing, let's allow the people that worked with him, loved him, respected him, the fans, let them grieve. If you want to bring it up a day or two later, I get it. Not the same day as the accident. That is just beyond reprehensible. I'm sorry. And like I said, I think that she should have lost her job over that because, again, as I said before, it's just there's no journalistic integrity to that whatsoever. So we'll go with that. So we're going to break off the video at this point and just continue with the recorded portion of the podcast now that my rant's over. So the video you'll be able to see on the TSG Sportsnet on the YouTube page. And for those watching the video, again, we'll give you the information for the recorded podcast, which will be much longer than this. And that's the podcast page, which is thesportsgreek.libsyn.com. I'm on Twitter as @BigGreek24. You can also get the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. So I hope you enjoy the video portion of it. I hope you choose to download and listen to the podcast. It's going to be available later this evening. We're reporting on Saturday, so hopefully later this evening. If not, first thing on Super Bowl Sunday morning. It will be put out on Twitter. The announcement for the show will be put out on Twitter, as well as the Facebook page, which is also the Sports Greek. So for those watching the video, have a great night, and we will continue with the recorded portion of the podcast in just one moment.